In this presentation, I'll attempt to highlight some of the values, beliefs, and behaviours of Australian rugby coach Bob Dwyer. Bob Dwyer started his coaching career at Randwick Rugby Club in Sydney before moving on to coaching Australia. He also coached Leicester Tigers and famously coached the Barbarians as well as other teams. So some of the values that I identified through the literature, all the coaches that I'm going to be doing videos about come from the Sports Coaching Cultures from Practice to Theory book by Jones, Armour, Pottrack in 2004. And there are three values that I identified through the literature. The first one being technique. He believes that technique, specifically the core skills, is a crucial part of coaching the game of rugby. Roles and knowing your role is very important, and also means that if everyone knows their role, then everyone is clear on what they're there to do, which is a trend among a lot of the coaches that I've looked at. And the last one is social care. What I found really interesting about this coach is, although technique and role are very sport specific, social care comes back down to the point of the person. So it's making sure that that person in front of you is okay. You're supporting that person, you're helping them as a human being, you're helping them to become, more stable, more supported. And ultimately, you're creating a safe environment for that person, which is something that I feel is something we talk about a lot in modern coaching, but considering Bob Dwyer did most of his coaching in the 80s and the 90s, I found it really interesting that this was happening back then, but we never really hear about it in coaching circles that often. So a couple of beliefs that Bob Dwyer has: advance and refine technical and tactical skills to create a collective and coherent unit. So what that basically means is he believes that if you make your technical and tactical skills better, you're going to create a team of people who are all on the same page and they're all going to work together. So that comes back down to that technical coach. Players need to understand their role and function in the team. So that comes back to the value of understanding your role. A player's performance is more important than the scoreline. So how that player actually performs in the team is more important than how many points you scored. This is something that I connect with as well, and a lot of the coaches I've read about agree with this point as well. Because at the end of the day, you could be playing against a really, really bad team and score loads of points, but you play the same level of performance against a much better team and you'll lose. Does that mean you were good? Does that mean you were bad? Or does that mean that the scoreline doesn't always reflect the performance? Coaches need a sound knowledge of the sport and first-class analytical and communication skills. I get the feeling he is a very attention to detail coach who believes that you've got to understand everything to the highest possible ability to be able to coach at a high level. And you've got to have the skills to back it up through analysis and through communication. Coaches need to demonstrate confidence on and off the field. So it's all very well standing on a pitch, saying how great everyone is and being confident on the pitch. But actually, when you're out in the real world, if you're quite shy and timid, the people are going to wonder, well, what's that about? And it's something that he's very passionate about. He also believes in the reverse. If you can talk a good game and you're very verbal off the pitch, but then when you're on the pitch, you're really quiet, then that's something that players are going to really pick up on. Caring for players leads to players being more successful. Showing that you care for those players means those players are more likely going to believe in what you're saying, because they know you're not just saying it for the sake of it. they know you're saying it because you care about them, and they'll respect that because of that. Understanding cause and effect is crucial. Making sure that you understand what's happening and why it's happening will help to solve a lot of problems. Having a high quality mental ability is greater than having a high quality physical ability. This is a really interesting belief because from my personal experiences, most coaches believe it's the other way around. It's more about what you can do physically rather than what you can do mentally, which actually everything comes from the mental ability. Behaviors. Help players understand their roles and responsibilities. This is a massive trend that's coming out in a lot of the literature that I'm reading. So this is obviously something that's really important. Develop players' technical qualities. Well, if you don't have those technical qualities, you're going to get found out and you're going to struggle. Use clear language that is easy to understand. This is something that's really important, and I find sometimes going back into academia, I'm finding it hard sometimes to understand some of the statements that some of these academics come out with. And so I understand that, and I feel that in sports, we sometimes get stuck in the jargon. You know, what does hindmost foot mean? What is a three-man block? What is a topspin serve? You know what they are if you're in the sport, or you know what they are if you've been coached it before. But a lot of the time, if you're working with new players or you're working with players who've been coached in different ways, they won't understand what you're saying. Develop mentally tough players, or resilient players is a bit of a buzzword as well, resilience. What does it actually mean? But developing mentally tough players is key, because you're going to come across some very difficult things. You're going to play against teams who are there really just to beat you, and they're going to challenge you. So being mentally tough is really important. And that comes back down to that social care as well. Because if you have got really good mental health, then you're going to do better under pressure than someone who doesn't. Concurrent instruction at high levels encourages quick and effective decision making. So what that basically means is being a good decision maker. So that comes back down to your role and also your technical ability. Because if you know what you can do and you know what everyone's expecting you to do, you're going to be able to do those things. But as a coach, making sure that everyone understands this is the way it's going to go, it gets everybody on board and it moves the session along a lot better. Use a sense of humor to lift tension. This is something that I like to think I'm quite good at when I coach, because I find a lot of the time, certainly in coaching circles, it gets very easy when you're talking about success, winning, losing, development. It's very easy to fall into the trap of creating tension, because people are going to wonder, is he telling me this because I'm not good enough? That makes someone feel uncomfortable. But actually using humor to break that tension is therefore going to help people to relax, which therefore means people are then going to feel more comfortable, which therefore means that they're going to perform better. Caring for players on and off the field. He talks about being almost like a surrogate parent to some of his players. And I feel that that is something that we need to understand within coaching, is although we're not parents to those players, although in some cases that might be the case, we're there to be a support network as well. Give constructive feedback to players on their weaknesses. It comes back to that how we give feedback. It's all very well saying you were rubbish. Well, tell them what was rubbish, and let's make it constructive. Because what constructive means is, how are they going to improve? Construction means building something. So that means we've got to give them the building blocks to be able to improve, which links back to not only the technical, but also to the social care as well. So a little summary regarding the reading. Caring for your players is not just an on the field responsibility, it's also what you do off the field too. Having a high quality mental ability is more important than a high quality physical ability. And this is something I would definitely agree with. Ensure players understand their role, responsibility, technical and tactical qualities, but also, and maybe more importantly, their weaknesses. Because use the language to understand, to help them understand. Use that language, because it's all very well giving them all the other tools, but if they don't understand what they need to improve on, then they're never going to improve, and they're eventually going to become very negative, towards the coach, because they'll just see you as someone holding you back. The scoreline is not as important as the player's performance, and the process of scoring and prevention of conceding. This is something that we often forget about in sport. We think that if we score more points, we're going to be successful. And that's true. But you've also got to make sure that you don't concede as many points. So the scoreline sometimes is almost irrelevant because it's more about the performance. But if you perform well in attack and defense, therefore you're going to have a much more favorable scoreline at the end of the game. And there's the reading.